Thank you and welcome back. Welcome back, Jeff. And I think we're
Yeah.
bringing a dear friend of yours on our next session, Mr. Chris Williams from the Smart Modified Tour.
Yes, Francis, pretty excited about that. And I really appreciate you and Judy making this happen because, again, this is a growing series. And it's a series that was around back in the early days that I was involved in NASCAR. And then it kind of died off a little bit. And my friend here, Mr. Chris Williams, who's coming on right now, is the guy who kind of like got it jump started again and is building it into a very worthwhile series and giving the guys down here in the we call the southern area an opportunity to have some great modified racing.
Absolutely. I'm excited to hear this one.
Yeah. Yeah, this could be interesting. This could be interesting. Chris, are you ready?
I'm ready. Can you hear me?
I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. And we were talking about, the tour has been around for a long time. But I feel like we'd be doing an injustice to those who are tuned in if we didn't go back a little bit to better understand the tour, your involvement in wanting to get back into it and wanting to in the direction you're taking it in. So if you kind of hear me a little bit, but what I found out, the Southern Modified Tour was somewhat born in like 1989.
That's
correct. Is that right?
That is correct.
So give us a little history of it.
Yeah, so the Smart Modified Tour was born in '89. They ran, probably, 7, 8 races, just basically in North Carolina, maybe 1 or 2 in Virginia, for a few years. People, Junior Miller, Andy Seiss, just a bunch of Frank Fleming, just a few of the old guys, basically toured, and ran down in the South. It kind of turned in around 95 or 96. NASCAR coming in, wanted to run the Wheeling Southern Modifieds. It took a stint for a few years and basically went dormant. Lack of fields, lack of competitors, just a lot of different things in the South just, took a back seat. At the time, Jeff, to be perfectly honest with you, my background a little bit, I was in NASCAR, working the souvenir industry, and I always had a passion for the modifieds. When they would come, the ground pounders, and of course, with me living in Martinsville, living on the racetrack road, my dad was a general manager there, and I just always loved the modifieds. At South Boston and Franklin County, and all those tracks.
Let me stop you right there real quick, because you touched on something, and I want to make sure everybody understood this. Literally, folks, when you come up and go toward Martinsville, when you get to the racetrack and you make that right-hand turn to go down to where the racetrack is, that's where his mom and dad lived.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, there was absolutely no excuse for you to not understand about Martinsville and how important Martinsville was.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a young kid growing up on the street, you had to be involved in racing, right? Because everybody did. And I became really good friends with Clay Campbell at the Martinsville Speedway. And my path took me into, helping Dad with the souvenirs and the concessions and all those things. And I really liked the souvenirs. And, lo and behold, Dale Earnhardt, he don't like to be called senior, right? Because he wasn't a senior. He was Dale Earnhardt. He gave us that lesson quite a bit. And Dale was a rookie back then, but he had come to Martinsville and ran the late models plenty of time. And, I was pulling for Jim Hensley and those guys, but my dad would get me in and I get to be around all those guys. Anyway, make a long story short, I took an interest in the souvenirs enough to where I got an opportunity to work for Dale in the 80s, and what a ride it was. I not only ran his souvenir trailer, then I become the vice president of trackside for him. Then he sold it to Action Performance. Everybody knows they're the diecast kings. I got to be vice president there. going to the racetrack each and every week, representing all of these drivers. Back in the day, it was Darrell Waltrip and Rusty Wallace, and even the old schools, Cale Yarborough and Petty and those guys. And then the next generation, of the Earnhardts and the Jarretts and the Baba Labanis and the Jeff Gordons, and then the next generations of the Kevin Harvicks. And so, I spent 38 years doing trademarks and licensing, built a great reputation just for Dale's instilled in me integrity, honesty, loyalty, and trust, and to the point where the licensing industry got sold to Fanatics in 2014, and I became vice president of Fanatics in the racing side, basically till the pandemic hit, when a lot of things shut down at that time. So, the background's been, business centric, dealing with Fortune 500 companies. Didn't matter if it was M&M, Budweiser, DuPont, you know what I'm saying, all of those guys. But living at the racetrack opened those opportunities, and watch, the world go by from a racing standpoint.
Okay, so all of that went extremely well, and you work for Fanatics, and they decided they wanted to pull out of racing, and you stayed there for a little while. But the long and the short of it, and here's where I'm going with this: who in their right mind would go and try to resurrect a racing tour that didn't work good when people that supposedly built it originally couldn't make it go, and NASCAR took it over. They couldn't make it go. They let it go. Why did you want to do this? And if Earnhardt was here today, would he have said that was a smart move on your part? Okay. How would you make business sense, and why?
Yeah, Earnhardt would have gave you all the reasons why not to do it, but when you decided to do it, he'd be all in behind you. So, I always loved, as I told you, modifieds, and I decided I wanted to hold a steering wheel. I'm never going to say I drove, but I wanted to hold a steering wheel, and I got to go over to Bowman Gray and run, and got to understand, kind of a little bit of what made the world tick. From you're not going to make a profit running race cars unless you're in a certain division. But in the modifieds, people say it's a hobby. It's definitely not a hobby. It's a passion. And so I was over there running Bowman Gray in the modifieds, and I enjoyed it. And I started listening to a lot of different people complaining about just different things, all of it. We would like to have a place to run. We can't find sponsorships. Tracks won't let us run because we don't have enough. They're not paying enough purse. There's no sense in us going. Tires are too much. So you started listening to all that, and then one day Buzzy come up to me, Tom Buzzy, and he says, "Hey man, what do you think about the modifieds?" And I'm like, "Well, I love them. I'm holding the steering wheel." And he says, "Well, let's look at maybe opportunities to start the tour back." And I said, "What tour?" And it's Smart Modified Tour. And, at the time, I was working in NASCAR, and you knew it existed, but you didn't know a lot about it. And I said, "So how are we going from here, Buzzy? What do we need to do?" And he said, "Well, come to the meeting we're having over at Puddin' Swishers." And so we went over to Puddin's, and I listened to everybody, the negatives. You can't race here. You're not going to get enough car count. You're never going to pay enough purse. Tracks ain't going to let you run. And I just stood and took all the notes down. And I'm like, I stood up in front of everybody, and I'm like, "Well, why?" And then nobody could really give me a reason why. And so I was like, let me make a few phone calls. So I picked up the phone and called Nick, from South Boston, who I had great relationships at Pocono. And I picked up the phone and called Darren Hackett, who I had great relationships with. And they're like, "Yeah, we'll do it. We're all in." So now you got the tracks supporting you. Then you had to go out and figure out, how you're going to put a structured purse together, something that was going to be entertaining to the fans, because obviously it hadn't, in the South, had worked. And so cost was number one thing in every bit of it. It didn't matter if it was tires. It didn't matter if it was fuel, backgate, and everything else. And so I just basically put a plan together that says, if I'm going to try this, you guys need to listen to me and see if it's going to work, because, in the world of souvenirs, in the world of licensing, all you do is figure out how to get to the consumer, how to get the product to the consumer, how to relate to them and bring a product to them that they want. And so I said, let's don't worry about back gates and stuff. Let's worry, it'll fix it if we can get a car count. But how can we get the car count? Well, the only way to get the car count is to get a purse structure that they're not going to tell their wives when they get home that, hey, I just spent $1,500 on tires, but I'm racing for $1,000, because that's kind of what it was going on. And so they're like, well, but we paid a purse off the back gates. And I'm like, I got all that. And I understand that totally. But don't you think you would rather race with 28 cars with the back gate issues and could pay those purse, or run with the same 7 or 8? To be honest with you, everybody kind of banded together down here in the South, and we have some of the best racetracks there are in Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. And they were looking for something different. Let's be honest again. One of the things that was happening is everybody was running late models, limited late models, super pros, pro late models, and everything was all fenders. There was nothing down here in the South, that had that sexy power, ground pounders as we call them, that could be that low to the ground and that powerful, and the fans love it, because if you ever go to a modified race, you're hooked. And so they all wanted that series here, and they all started working with me, and everybody pulled together. And the first year we had 17, 18. Last year we had 20. Year before last, 22. We had 22 car count. This year we ended up having 25, but we had 30 some cars at multiple events. And so the one thing that I've learned dealing with the folks at NASCAR and the Fortune 500s is you got to do what you say you're going to do. And if you maintain that credibility, people will then believe in you and trust in what you're doing. And so we built that off of integrity, not only with the sponsors, with the tracks, with the manufacturers, and with the race teams. And so far, it's turned out pretty well, working relationship with all of them.
So with your business background, you came up with a plan that the competitors bought into first, because you
Absolutely.
had to have the car count before you could even get going anywhere else. And that has paid dividends. How has it been, though, Chris, for you? Has it been a big a headache as people would probably imagine? Because what you just got through telling me in the very opening of this right here, and I know you really well. So I mean, it's like I understand your mentality. Okay. Yeah. I mean,
well, I'm a competitor,
you're a smart son of a gun, but sometimes you don't always do the smartest thing. But this whole thing has always fascinated me. But when it gets down to, you gave them hope that they weren't just throwing their money away. Am I hearing you right here? And because of that, the fans rewarded you and showed up, and you guys you put on fantastic shows. Most any place you go, there's always been, photo finishes. And I think the other thing is, since your inception and beginning of this right here, not only did you go in and start anew, but you've come back and you've given, I think, the Smart Tour some swagger that they lost there in the 2000s. Am I correct? When they basically went dormant again.
Absolutely. And so, you open up a bunch of stuff in the comments. Number one, to be honest with you, I thought it was easy. And I know people say, well, if it's easy, everybody can do it. No, if you really want to solve problems, you have to bring everybody together. You have to put them in a room. You have to sit there and talk about openness of what all those problems are. And that's what I used to do back in the NASCAR days, is how do we solve these problems? How do we solve shipping? How do we solve product development? How do we solve the mass of people in a certain amount of time, and credit card operations? And I know I'm getting way deep into it, but if you solve problems, then if you put everybody in a room and you say, what are the issues? And when you can get into the issues and start checking them off one at a time where they don't become problems anymore, then you have a fluent operation. right? And once you get into that fluent operation and you show people that we can make this work and they believe in you, then everybody's going to push, they're going to push the cart up the road, right? They're going to push it uphill for you. And that's exactly what happened. Now, is it difficult? Absolutely. Is it ever changing? 100%. Is finding the sponsors and the people that believe in what you're doing from a relationship standpoint, it's all tough. It's all tough in all of racing. But look, we put a band together with people that love the sport, and we don't forget our history. And so we bring in the old school guys, we honor them. Ray Hendrick and all of those guys, we honor them to a certain extent because we don't want to forget where we came from. Our race director is David Hoots, who had 40 some years in NASCAR. And, our cameraman is Phil Cavalli. Everybody that we touch, we bring all the band together that has years and years and years of experience. And it adds credibility. It adds fun, right? Because if you're having fun, then everybody's going to, enjoy what direction we're going to. Then you become very competitive, which becomes challenges, right? It's how you manage, inspection, how you manage this. We had to go out and build, a huge inspection station, and we had to go out and build off of everything that we're doing. We had to bring in some qualified inspectors. Gadget's been helping us out, who's had vast history in the racing world. But once you bring them in and you see what's going on, then you find credibility. And then how you deal with all of those issues. We brought a board in, so it can't be me being the ruler, judge, jury, and prosecutor, because that was one of the things in the first year. Well, if you're directing and you're doing all the other stuff, then who do we go to complain, right? And so I brought in a board members that are all engaged in racing. They're past champions. They're crew chief champions in NASCAR. You being one of them, which I really appreciate it. But all that adds credibility, and we bring lawyers in, and we bring licensings in, and we bring just different facets to it. And then if we have a problem, we take it to the board and we work through it. And to be honest with you, the credibility of just that process, they found out we wouldn't fly by night. They found out that we was working through the issues. We're not doing everything perfectly, but in 3 short years, we've made vast gains. We have a great contract with Flow. Flow, we got a couple more years with Flow. We're in the top so many percent of everything that's being viewed, which is good. Our racing is very competitive. Those guys at Flow have done a tremendous amount of getting extra cameras and doing the things that you want to do, that the fans want to see. We're not sitting still, even with the camera angles and stuff. We're working with Glitch to do some things inside the race car that we're going to add to the Flow telecast next year. And so everything is an evolution of credibility. Just doing what you say you're going to do. And yeah, it gets difficult at times to move so many people. We had 61 cars in our series this year, but we only had 11 cars that made every race. 61 is a great count. You know what I'm saying? Right. But at the same time, you have to have a consistency of car count every week to really mask what's going on with your sponsors, your coverage, your tracks, and the race fan. Let's be honest. You want to put as many people in the racetrack as you can, so everybody has an opportunity to tell the story, right? Doesn't matter if it's the competition. It doesn't matter if it's from TV standpoint, but you have to look at things totally different of every decision that you make. Can compound, as you say, I do things sometimes as a challenge, and sometimes they're not all right. But you know what? If you don't go down that path, you can't check it off to say you did it wrong, right? So you learn by mistakes, and we're doing well. And you're saying we do have a little swagger. A lot of people is noticing us. A lot of people is paying attention to what we're doing. We're doing something that a lot of people said couldn't be done, that you couldn't run modifieds in the South. And, the good thing is we respect the Northerners. We respect those competitions with the Hirschmans and the people. And we've had quite a few that's come down and run with us. And, you know, the cool thing about it is when they come down, they find out that I'm passionate about racing. I'm passionate about treating people with respect. I'm passionate about history. And look, I drove them. You know, I didn't say I was great at it, but at the same time, I wanted to learn a little bit more about what they're having to do in the race car, which will then makes me adapt to how we make decisions on the tour going forward.
Now, all those things right there you're saying, I'm glad you're touching on it, because again, I'm from afar, and I appreciate being on that board because I see that passion. I see the desire. I love the guys that are your foundation teams, like the Tom Buzzies of the world. There's a guy who's been in racing. He makes a living in racing. But at the same time, your current champion, Burt Myers, great family history right there. But and I think what, you know, I marveled about, but at the same time concerned about whenever he got himself a little bit sideways with you a year ago. And, you know, we had to, you know, pretty much had to penalize him, and it took him out an opportunity to, you know, maybe be back-to-back champion. But
Yeah.
at the same time, it showed the rest of the series that, look, you know, rules are rules. You break the rule and you're going to get penalized. And, you know, it's going to be the kind of thing that's going to be fair. And yet the same time, we're not going to play favorites. I don't care who you are. You break a rule, you're going to wind up being penalized for it. And I think that you keep talking about credibility and integrity. I love the way it's kind of processed through, because if there's one thing that, having been around grassroots racing as a whole, growing up in and around it, and even all the way back to the very origination of the Smart Tour, there was always criticism sometimes of how people were treated by the managers, by the managing group at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing that, you know, with your ability to market, I think, you know, you've done a great job bringing in Pace-O-Matic as one of your title sponsors. And I think they've gained from it. And at the same time, they're the kind of organization that they don't need bad press, they need good press. And you've been able to accomplish that. And I think everybody, if you're listening here, what I'm saying about the Smart Tour is, if there's a template out there right now of how to do it, I think you've got a pretty good one of where you put your emphasis. And like a lot of people that know about grassroots racing, back gates, a big selling point or a negative point, you know what I'm
That's
saying?
right.
So I think that, you know, what you've been able to accomplish has been pretty impressive because, as I said, Burt Myers was in trouble in 2022. Burt Myers is now your champion in 2023. And at the same time, through the growth of this, the things that you did to try to bring attention to the tour, some of the advertisements you put out there, some of the spin-offs from, you know, movies and you know, just funny things, skits that included not only yourself and other people that are a part of the Smart Tour, but, you know, the drivers, you know, got them personalities. You know, you talk about the 11 drivers that you had this year, full time, or that was there all the time. Those kind of personalities are what sell T-shirts and help put tickets in there, because you get a fan base. People have a reason to go to the racetrack. And I think that's another thing that people don't need to overlook. And I want to give you a tip of the cap from the fact that a couple years ago, there was a rebirth at a location where you guys kind of like were home to, and I'm talking about North Wilkesboro. How did it feel, Chris, to be invited to come back up there and your organization being one of the first to compete on the old North Wilkesboro Speedway?
Well, number one, historical. You know, 96, I was there representing Earnhardt, and I remember the very last race there. But the modifieds was made for that. They had the Coke 300. They had the triple header, double headers up there. There in Martinsville in the South, you know, was the mainstay for the modifieds. And I was raising my hand with Barry Braun and the folks at SMI, who's done a superb job with it, say, I want to be there. I want to be the first one there. No matter when it is, middle of the week, and weekend, it don't matter. I'm in. And to go up there and put on the show that we did, Really mainstay that the Modifieds was here to stay in Wilkesboro. And we loved every minute of it. Baba Labonte and Newman ended up winning the first race back. Hirschman won the second night. And I'm gonna tell you, the Modifieds at Wilkesboro really put on a show. It was great to see it resurrected. All the fans was extremely happy. We haven't announced our schedule yet, but at the same time, we're doing everything that we can to put these Modifieds back where we think they're made to race, Hickories and South Bostons. And, maybe we do something with Wilkesboro. We've got some announcements coming up in the next week or so before PRI. And to be honest with you, it's healthy. The Smart Modified is healthy right now.
To be honest with me, big announcements coming out of the Cars Tour. I know a few of the guys over there, from the past. Can you speak to the fact that will we see Smart Tour maybe somewhere along the Cars Tour during the course of 2024?
Yeah, that's one thing that I think that would entice and uplift racing is to have a true, doubleheader somewhere along the line. We've got to take in consideration of what tracks are capable of doing that, front stretch, back stretch, parking and stuff of that nature. And there's 3 or 4 in the South that could do that. Of course, Wilkesboro would be 1 for sure. South Boston would be 2. And so we've had very good conversations with the Cars Tour about doing something like that. I represented Junior and Harvick and those guys back in the day, and, we lean on each other for conversations and stuff of that nature. The Cars Tour is doing a really good job, and, we're hand in hand, kind of controlling what's going on in the Mid-Atlantic region at this point. But at the same time, that would be great to see for sure.
Well, I see Francis and Judy is here. That's usually let me know that we've got just a few seconds to say goodbye and job well done. But my friend, it's always a pleasure, and I hope to be able to wish you continued success, and just don't be making any calls with any guys' rules infraction during this point of the year. I'm trying to go on vacation, okay?
Hey, I'm the poor man's Bill France. I eat hot dogs and stuff. I let them all do that stuff, right?
That's right.
And I see where the swagger comes from.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
But
Registering on Epartrade is easy. To start, click on the Join for Free button on the homepage. First, search your company to see if it's already in our database. If you see your company on the list, click on it to select it. Then, choose Claim Company if you are one of the decision makers, an owner, marketing person, or main company contact. Or choose Join Company if you are an employee, and press Continue. If you couldn't find your company in our database, select Register a New Company. On the following page, fill out your name, email, phone number, job title, and choose a secure password. If you chose Register a New Company, you'll need to choose your business type. Select Supplier if you're looking to display products or services and connect with buyers. Choose Racing Business if you're looking to source new parts and connect with suppliers. Choose Race Team if you own or are a member of a professional race team. Then, enter your company name. Please provide a website, Facebook page, or LinkedIn if you have one, and choose to either claim or join the company. You can view and agree to our terms of use here. If you'd like to receive our weekly newsletter, choose Accept. Finally, click Register Now and your registration will be submitted for approval. An email will be sent to your inbox. Please confirm your email address and you will be approved shortly. Welcome to Epartrade.